siding with the SDP, but it's the other way around, that they're siding with me. Okay, so don't accuse me of being a dirty socialist, okay?
God.
Thank you.
I will keep this fair and nice.
That's nice. Good. I'll start off and just ask how your day was.
It was great. Only it sucks because I don't have my manifesto in front of me. But I will do whatever I can to make you fall. So, I have it all in my head. I wish you best of luck, and I want to ask you how your day was.
Okay, it was very well done. I had lots of boring lessons, and also generally I was very tired at the end that I had a bit of chocolate. So
for the funny survey, I just started.
yeah, I saw that.
Tom, don't forget it.
Yeah, I think we can put Rajput to start first.
Yeah.
It's funny. I'm sorry. He's funny when he doesn't want to be. It's just that's just the weird part.
Some people are just funny instead of being serious, and some people want to be serious, but they're just funny when they do it. Yeah. So, well, Anthony,
Okay.
it off should gun.
Okay.
Let the race begin.
Considering the current state of Zealandia, what is the top goals for the first 30 days of governance if you are commissioned as the First Minister? And,
Who's that directed at first?
pardon?
You go.
Okay, let me get my headphones. My parents coming in there, so headphones.
I guess. Is he going first?
Whichever one of you goes.
I don't mind.
Bradley can go first.
I could go first if you wanted.
Whichever one isn't making that
Yes.
awful noise.
It's my father, hence why I'm trying to block out the sound. Sorry.
We're like
Okay.
Tarzan.
We'll let Bradley.
Dad. Oh, I can't hear me. Apparently, you sound like Tarzan. Okay, that's done.
Okay.
Just so he knows.
I've got to take this. Sorry. Right. Wait a minute. This is getting annoying now. Don't you just hate it when your headphones get tangled up?
That happened to me on the bus the other day.
Oh shit, what am I doing?
Okay. Headphones are in. I'm listening now. Try again. Okay.
Did you need me to repeat the question?
Yes, please.
Considering the current state of Zealandia, what is the top 10 goals for the first 30 days of governance if you are commissioned First Minister?
Okay. As First Minister, it'll be my aim to completely renovate how Zealandia works, a complete reshufflement of the cabinet to make sure it reflects what Zealandia stands for, better relations within the community, so new ministers and perhaps several assistants for the foreign affairs issue, as we know that through the first initiative of Mr. Bayer, this has given Zealandia a negative look. What will also be interesting to promote more equality, as you know, Zealandia is a nation where there are many people of different backgrounds and also of different disabilities and abilities. So I think it's perfect that we should continue going on with a trail that we continually support each other, and that we continue to be and hopefully will be a leading country in the micromobility sector.
Okay. Now it's... No, gather...
Very well done. For me, it's the same question, I guess. What I will do is focus mostly on internal affairs, changing the constitution to undo the damage the SDP has done on Linden. Make sure that the king is involved in the government more as a getting the role of a deputy first minister. like in Wyvern, we have a high participation of the king and the prime minister, and I want to reflect this into Zealandia as well, because it could be noticed that Anthony is one of the most active citizens within Zealandia, and the prime citizen of all. As a conservative, I believe that a monarchy should be maintained, and that the monarchy is an important factor of our nation. As First Minister, I want to show that we still rely on the king. I would also make major political reforms. I want, like the Senate, to be abolished. I want to make sure that if a cabinet is, although my manifesto says differently, I would want that and the national peoples work together as coalition partners to ensure that we make a picture to each other, that we all unite to make Zealandia one of the better nations.
Can I just continue on with that?
Sure.
Sure, yeah. On a lot of places there, I'm actually on the same ground as you. Okay, I'm not completely against everything you said there. I think it's right that we do consider what is completely useless to the Zealandians. I think it's also important that we try to reinstate how the king is seen. However, in my own view, I much prefer the kind of constitutional monarchy idea rather than having the king directly as a main player in politics. As much as I should be able to give his say, as much as I believe the king should be there to lead his people, I do believe that while the parliament should remain for the people, run by the people, and making decisions for the people, and I think the king should be able to trust his own people to do that, and to have the king directly in there, it shouldn't really be such a big issue. In order that the king does not look as if something that's ceremonial and something that's just shoved in the corner, I believe the king should be able to participate in much more cultural activities, basing itself on what Zealandia stands for, because what Zealandia is mainly based on what Anthony stands for, which is the monarchy, the roots in Britain, in New Zealand, in Germany, all those places, and I think that's right.
Yes, to respond to this, it's indeed a great responsibility that we must remain at a constitutional monarchy, the king to be involved in the government, to be protected by the government, and of course I want to hold the full power at the parliament. The people must choose their representatives, and the parliament should hold all power. I don't believe in two houses. I think the first house, the higher house, should be abolished. We should only have let's call it the House of Commons.
Yep.
Should only have a House of Commons, a parliament, and not a Senate who control only with an original purpose to, in this case, mostly I think, to look at the laws if they are possible. I think the parliament can do that for themselves, to cut bureaucracy. And I think that the king should, as deputy, could do for the government, leading when the prime minister is ill, or advising the prime minister. It would close the gap between the king and the prime minister. It would not make the king any more a puppet of the prime minister as it was under the von Linden era, as we would call it, because the first minister had the power to do. Yeah, it was very weird examples that were given, but that the king had nothing to say about it, but it was in his name or something to the parliament. He had to accept it. So I think that the king should be able to gain a veto just one time for a law, where he can say, people, this is just not right.
Okay. What you're saying is completely understandable, it's completely respectable here. But all ministerial roles should always be handed in a government owned, again, for the people, by the people, should be in the hands of the people. The king holds a very, very important position as a person who can open parliament, close parliament, speak for the parliament.
I am the Speaker of Parliament.
Sorry?
I am the Speaker of Parliament too.
Yeah, that's great. So I think that sort of role should be kept. However, seeing that we also have a lot of involvement from other nations that help, in some circumstances, run Zealandia, the idea, I think Mr. Fowler already has, King Anthony, has already several roles on his plate that he must be able to consider before he completely gets stuck in with Parliament. What we've learned from the past in other countries is that if you get the king directly involved in a government, they may use it to their own advantage. I'm not exactly saying that King Anthony cannot be trusted, because I think he's a very trustworthy man, but I think that we should show a neutral stance on this issue, and we need to make sure that the king is given his position, given his role, but I do not believe at all he should be given positions that the people should be running for, people should be gaining an active interest to take part with.
Yes, indeed. I think that indeed the king should not gain too much power. I think we should not give the king too much on his plate. I do think that the king has an important role in politics, as we just described earlier. Mm-hmm. And indeed, we must hold a straight line, because we cannot guarantee Anthony to be king forever.
No.
And in a straight line, a monarch, an absolute monarch, can never be trusted, in my opinion. Although Anthony is just a trustworthy man, as we all said, power corrupts. And indeed, like Griffin's system, I would not advise it in Zealandia. Zealandia has also different views, and I don't want to introduce that. Mm-hmm. But I do think that the king should be a real big part of the government, not as a minister, but just as a partially deputy head of government, in which he is at all government meetings, is involved in advising and in controlling the government, but on a deputy status.
Okay, well, I think a compromise can be made here. As you said, a purple government or a coalition, in the case that happens, which it probably will, I do think that a compromise should be made here, that I think that King Anthony should not be given a deputy position, but he should be able to keep a head of government role. Like in many of the nations, he should be able to take part in all government meetings. I think he should be able to be there to advise what goes on. He's had much more experience than either any of us have. Though I still think the First Minister and the Deputy First Minister roles should be kept for the commoner people. And I think that we can create a new position, if it's not already created, which is a head of government role. The First Minister can act as a speaker and leader, whilst the king can contain a role that is more suitable, that allows him to advise and able to protect the rights of his constitution and his territory.
Yes, I think that this compromise I would accept.
Okay.
Actually, I think that indeed our king could actually become the head of government, leading the government, but only to a public, involving in meetings, whilst in the chambers, the first minister and the deputy take up the role as leader of the government, but that the decision officially by constitutional name only of head of government is given to the king. Indeed, as you described.
Okay. Well, of course, this negotiation will probably have to happen at some point. So, I think we kind of know what's going to be expected from the king, and I think we know what's going to be expected of the First Minister. I want to bring up another point, which is on the basically of the purple government on on the coalition government. I discussed this with Granny quite a few days ago, that the ministerial jobs should be proportionally distributed to the actual vote. So if 40% of the votes went to the National People's Party and the others went to SDP/Independent, I think roles should be given out that way, apart from the First Minister role, which allows either party or either parties to get together and to have their own positions in government whilst running a compromise, because we can't have compromise when only the majority party takes these positions. So I do think it's important that we keep this kind of mixed government. It keeps the views of the people in, and it also allows parties not to become enemies like we see in the United Kingdom, because that's very counterproductive, and we never see solutions. We just see complaining.
Yes, indeed. I think a more effective idea is that two party leaders sit down, or the independents sit down, and that for coalition meetings will begin to look if a possible coalition, which I see coming, because I endorsed a purple document, as I call it, uniting the left and right under a government coalition. I think that in this coalition we should, not on the basis of the vote, but on the basis of the seats they have within the parliament, and how many ministers they can deliver. I think that, like, if I can reflect it to the Dutch politics, the People's Party for Freedom and Democracy is the biggest party and has more say in Democrats.
Okay. I do believe, though, in the cases that you do have, in the example of Holland at the moment, you have certain parties that have been seen as controversial. One should take into account what roles are given to each party. For example, if you give a very right-leaning party a job such as controlling immigration, for example, whilst other roles such as agriculture are given to more socialist-tending parties, you will have a lot of a disagreement there. So I do think that roles should be able to, perhaps in the case of immigration, where it is seen as a sensitive topic, that perhaps in that case a role should be taken up perhaps by an independent colleague who's willing to work with two representatives from the party. That has to be compromised, but I do not think that as it stands, Zealandia doesn't have a minority far-right party, so I don't think this is going to be a major issue for us, because it's one person, and that person, for all we know, could treat their role with complete unfairness, and therefore treat his country with complete unfairness. So that should never happen.
Yeah, what I do think is that we should make a government agreement before entering the coalition. It is important that we make compromises for each other and make a good, clear policy on every topic, the most important topic. Even and it may be possible that if becomes the biggest, and not joining one coalition, we should talk about a minority government in which the other party will endorse some topics, so that a clear be taken. Although I don't see this happening, I think we should make government agreements before we enter the coalition, because it's very important that you make clear points, as I've seen with my experience in Wivren, that the CLP and the WSMP has had quite differences, because social democrats.
Sorry. I'm going to have to disturb you for a minute, Bradley. Excuse me for a minute. Sorry, sorry, I don't mean to disturb you.
I understand.
That's coming, so...
Oh, sorry. Don't mind, James, don't mind.
Okay.
what I was saying was that before we enter a clear coalition or government, we should make government agreements in which we talk about every topic and we compromise so that every mainline or important topic of each party has the room be in it, although maybe not as they clearly wished in their points, but more compromised, but still that the two parties could work together and that we don't make a quick government, that we really work hard to establish one.
Okay.
That's one of my important points here.
Okay. All right. Well, as I said, we just need to come to a compromise when it comes to this decision about who gets which roles. Of course, we shouldn't get a complete minority government because that will lead to complete disagreements. A reason why that is because I'm running as an independent, because I don't, as an isocratist and also as a general non-partisan politician, I prefer it if government stays away from party ties, because that ruins the whole point of having a parliament, because you're basically running in a company at the end of the day. But of course, in this case, we have people who are very eager to run, and I'm absolutely open to people working together on certain positions, and again, that's up for a government agreement that comes along after the election. I need to ask though, how many more questions are going to be asked tonight?
I've got a couple more before I run out.
Okay. So, do you want to conclude this, or?
I have two more and then we'll finish up.
Okay.
All right. May I ask one question to James?
Yes, of course.
If we create a government, you are only endorsed by the SDP. Wouldn't it be a problem if, when we are in the government, ruled by independents and by my party, the National Peoples, wouldn't it be problematic if the SDP said we do not support this topic, so that we don't get a majority in such a matter because you are not part of that party?
In that case, where complications arise where the SDP does not support any decisions I take, or in the case where the SDP doesn't agree with what I say, I just aim that, because I am of course more leaning towards the left, that will hopefully allow the SDP to work with me. But of course the SDP still has its leader. If there are confusions between me and the SDP, completely up to them to compromise with myself, we come to some sort of general agreement. I don't think it's going to cause such a problem because, as we know, the leader of the SDP, King Anthony, we can get on. If it really does become a problem, then the idea may have to be in such seriousness that I will step down. But I don't believe that will happen. As an independent, I'm here to run as First Minister, here to run the government completely free of any political ties, with the aid of either party. So it's really up to if the two parties can get along, in my view.
Yes, of course.
I don't think that if major complications does arise, again, it's just down to talking to each other and compromising.
But it would be problematic for our government, of course, because we would have the support of the SDP.
It would be problematic if sorry, that piano's really annoying me. In the case that happens, okay, I really don't see it as, again, I don't see it as a big problem. I expect the SDP to behave normally. As an independent, I don't believe it's, I don't lead the SDP. They're in their own right to disagree with whatever I say. It's happened in many other countries before, because if you go to certain countries, I know it's not the best example, like Belarus, because that's got a dictatorship, but in the ideal situation where Belarus wasn't a corrupt dictatorship, Litvinenko isn't actually a tie to any party. He's an independent, and he gets assistance from either party. So he manages to work with either party, and in the case that there's a disagreement, he may be able to give a more experienced role on the issue, as he has no...
Yes. Of course, you offer the solution to hang more to the left.
Yeah.
Although it's a smart decision.
It's a personal preference. It's not because I want the SDP to win. It's because.
What I mean was during. Let's say we are in a coalition, and the SDP doesn't endorse one of our topics, then you would lean more to left to gain them with you. But but wouldn't that, as a result, anger the national peoples?
Some compromise. I'd have to be able to get the SDP to come along with me, but also making them realise the National People's Party may have a point somewhere along the track, which then will backfire onto the National People's Party to have a compromise again. So, in the case the SDP disagrees with what me and the National People's Party say, if it doesn't work out, then we may be able. This is the sort of thing I like, where we're able to enact certain laws in certain areas of Zealandia where it may be felt more comfortable. So let's say you had a law on agriculture, you wouldn't enact it in a place where there's no farmland, but you would enact it in a place where there is farmland. So in those sort of situations, you apply the law to where it is needed.
All right. Also, then, if we would create a coalition, then do you endorse my idea to make the SDP sign a kind of agreement that they endorse the government on certain topics that we have, where the independents and the national peoples have agreed on? They don't have to agree with everything, but that we give them a list and that they pick out what they endorse and that they can sign that.
I do not speak on behalf of the SPC now.
Let me try that.
I think what's important is that it happens for both sides. So a list that happens in a list in a government agreement is made up, and the key issues which you both agree on are highlighted, and therefore those key issues that you both agree on that need targeting are signed upon, and that's for both parties. You can't. I'm not going to accuse certain parties for that if elected First Minister. And I think it's best that we get ourselves on track for the issues that both parties care most about. Otherwise, again, you're going to have a moaning, complaining Parliament.
Yes, indeed. I would explain why these concerns are here, because we have in the Netherlands a unique construction in which we rely on the party, the government, and I don't want the SDP to, close the door to us when we go radical, to a topic in which the independents and the national think it's needed to change something, and that the SDP don't shut the door to us,
No, that's not what I'm going to make happen. As an independent, my aim is... Are you there?
Yes, sir.
Sorry. It's my aim that as an independent First Minister, I'm able to kind of glue the two parties together, so a compromise can always be made. And if there are disagreements, it's not. There should be no pushing on either side. And I think through a mini council, an informal council that could be made of representatives from either party, that should be able to act as a little made.
All right.
Also, that's all down to the government agreement that comes along.
Yes.
But I should not be completely leaning upon one side, and should always be it should always put Zealandia first, and it should always put the people first before it puts forward any other ideas that may ruin the soup that is being formed in that council. You don't want to spoil it.
No, of course, but still, I have my doubts on working this, because I do trust the SDP. I do trust them, but I really fear this government type. I would rather invite them into the government than that we make a three-party government, that the independents, national peoples, and the SDP form together a government.
It's I think that, yeah, again, the idea was, the initial idea was that you proportionally distribute the roles between the parties, depending on who won in the election or votes. And, yeah, it depends on the size of endorsements. Monetary endorsements is a complete no-no. Yeah, it's a complete bribe.
What's the surname?
Well, what can you repeat that again?
I'm saying that the idea, I would never think that in the first place. Was saying that we should always have a proportionally distributed parliament between each party that won the election. Okay, so again, any endorsement that may be seen as unfair to either side, okay, that has to be thought through. And again, that can be handed to the king, that can be handed to the first minister, and that can even be handed to the people in their vote if people are not so sure about that.
Yeah. All right, now that we have made clear how we want our government construction, both want a government relying on endorsements, so that we can now continue with other topics.
Yes,
do you agree?
I agree entirely. There are differences, of course, in how we would like it run, but I think, again, some compromise can be made somewhere along the line.
Indeed.
Okay. Mr. Fowler, can we move on to the next question, please?
Hang on.
Your Majesty.
With regards to our neutrally armed stance, will your government continue that?
Continue what, sorry?
The neutrally armed stance.
Yes, again, my own personal preferences of general socialism will not completely affect my own decisions. I will aim to make sure that the SDP and the National People's Party form a compromise, and that also a level-headed balance is given on every issue that's
I didn't understand the question quite well.
No, he was asking whether my independent stance, how I stand as independent will continue. So I will remain an independent. If I always make sure that how I run the government always is as an independent.
All right.
Okay. I don't. As long as the SDP, I will make sure that the SDP will always be there to back me. But I will not completely bow down to the SDP because, as it stands at the end of the day, the SDP is happy to follow me and I'm happy to guide them, but I'm not going to be there to completely agree with all their policies. I'm not going to also be there to agree with all the policies of the National People's Party. My stance is that I work with an influence from the SDP, but not as an SDP myself.
It's also for the National Peoples, that the independents guarantee that they're independents but endorsed by, and that they're not slaves or the puppets of.
No, and that should never be the case. We've seen enough from this from Leffler, from Frederick Bayer. We don't definitely want it happening again, and I don't think it's worth getting all paranoid about it happening again, because I think we have very, very confident and very apt politicians who are ready to run the country.
I apologise for that, guys, for my absence, but the EQC bloke came and inspected the place.
Okay.
Earthquake Commission.
Okay. So, is everything okay?
He left an info sheet that I'll read later.
Okay, that's good. Are we able to continue with the next questions, please?
Yes. I think this is our final question. Well, it's the only one that I've left on the piece of paper that I wrote down.
Mr. Fowler, Your Majesty, so, shall I start?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Of course, I believe that the police service is a complete important faction of Zealandia. It characterises it completely. As much as I agree with personal freedom and libertarianism, the law is the law. It should not be avoided, and to have, even in the case of politics, we should always act in the interests of the people. The law should be drawn up that it is fair upon everybody. It's not based on not based completely on ideology, but based on what is right for the country, what is right for the situation that you are in. In the example of the police force, I'd be happy to to agree with that. The police service should continue to be a main what's the word? A main function, a main part of what Zealandia is. And the law should be there to reflect how the law can be enforced. Laws about immigration should be taken with a pinch of salt, as it stands for our micronation. And if we want to be able to enact certain laws, it should be up to, in my opinion, individual provinces, depending on the threat of who's going to come in, who's going to come out. There are many ideas that could be thought through this. I would like to ask Mr. Fowler, though, how the SDP stands on law enforcement, because I'm not completely aware.
The SDP stands fairly firm on reforming the law enforcement, because we have like a bazillion and one policing agencies.
Yeah.
Including merging the border police into the Royal Zealandia Constabulary.
Yes.
But our immigration policy is pretty bit, you want in, yeah, as long as you're not like a criminal, you're welcome.
Yes. I think we should keep our open arms there. I'm looking at the National People's Party manifesto here. I mean, I don't mean to pick out certain bits, but if I can find what I was just reading a minute ago, the national ID card should be enforced. Everyone should own one. Everyone who hasn't will be seen as illegal immigrants and will have to move out. Of course, that may be seen as quite threatening to those who may want to visit Zealandia, those who may want to live Zealandia free of concern. The ID card is a great idea that allows people to have a piece of identification that they can be proud of. However, to use it to blame certain people, to invade on people's privacy, I do not agree with. On the terms of immigration, I do believe that a passport is always needed. In the case that we are part of an alliance with another country, I think it should be the case that we have lax laws with other nations. So let's say we're friends with, as you already are, with Lancashire. Lancashire is very close in proximity to Zealandia now, since Royal Northampton opened up its opened up shop. So I think lax laws should be kept with our allies, though with other countries, of course, keep a firm line. Don't allow those who are not willing to comply with what Zealandia stands for come in. Allow tourists, absolutely fine with tourists. They're not illegal immigrants at all. And work should be available to all, as long as they have the qualifications, as long as they have the experience, and as long as they can understand what they're working for.
I will take it from here. I think that as Mr. says, I think that immigration laws should be strict. We should. Tourism is fine, of course. I do not believe in visums. I think that if you can show that you're not a citizen, but a citizen of other micronation, that we should not bother. But I do think that to become a citizen, we should make a test to show if they have a basic knowledge of Zealandia, a basic knowledge of the micronationalism, and that they have a basic knowledge, about the politics, about the culture, about the language. We should all test these things to make sure that we only have the most active and the most people who want to do something for the nation instead of being a part of it. And I think that is one of my most important points. And also about the police force, I think that the police force should be big. Should not consider itself searching for drugs or something. Drugs should be totally legalized. The police should only search for the criminals who can behave. Vandals must pay. It's a slogan that means that we won't allow vandalism. We won't allow criminals. We won't allow lawbreakers. They will be punished severely. And teaching them that breaking the law, breaking the constitution, it is immoral, and a moral society in which we should not go and break laws. You know, we should teach them by severely punishing them.
Okay.
This could go from jail sentence to a fine of course, of my personal money.
Sorry, excuse me for a minute. Sorry, I've got a question from a friend at school. Oh, God. Exposed. You still there?
Yes, we are.
Yes, yeah, okay.
Yes.
My views on immigration are very simple. That I'm in the UK. I'm in support of a point system. I don't know if Zealandia wants to go on with that, but it evaluates exactly what your use is to the country, what your use is to society. To say that you can adopt yourself to morals is quite a sensitive thing. I do believe that Zealandia has culture. I do believe that Zealandia should allow people to partake in culture, but it should not be enforced on people. I do believe that Zealandia should be a land of all cultures, a land of all people, and when it comes to inviting people in, we should not act like we're surrounded by police people who are going to beat down anybody who may look at the tiniest bit suspicious. I do believe that it is up to the government to show a lenient and a tolerant approach to everything. Of course, I'm up for border control. I'm up for open borders with our allies. I'm also up for general good relations. I think what can happen in the case that we can evoke some sort of border policy is that this is educated to all citizens of Zealandia. It is made clear on all public sites, and it's also allowed to make sure that that you are not seen as a threat, but it's just out of our own personal interest. As it stands, I think everyone should be entitled to free speech. Everyone should be entitled to say what they want without having fear of being punished. But I wouldn't take such a hard approach as Mr. Van der Hoeven is actually proposing here, because I think that is a little bit. It's too far, in my opinion. I don't think you can exactly bring in such a fierce policy as if to say to anybody who comes in that you are a potential threat. I'm not for tests, because, as we know, tests only evaluate what's already in your nation. There are many interpretations of how you may think a nation runs. So really, it will not evaluate. It just evaluate your ability to exactly agree with everything, and that's just showing a load of bowing down to leaders. And I'm never for that.
All right, I understand this, but of course, with this test should only test the basics. You should not go for only one good answer. If they are in a general direction of this might be the good answer, we should accept them.
Okay. Well, are you aware of what the British citizenship test actually is at the moment, Mr. Van Hoeven?
If I'm correct, they must learn about the provinces, the language, some of the culture, and I'm totally supporting it.
I'm going to tell you a very funny story. I went into my local bookshop and I picked up a book about life in the UK with example questions, and you'll be surprised how many of them I can answer myself. And I've been living in the UK for 15 years, so I cannot really say that we cannot give them a written paper. That is completely out of the question, because not everyone cannot be able to answer it. Not even the citizens who are already here will not be able to answer it. What should be evaluated is that the basic comprehension, if the test is introduced, of what Zealandia is, what its main principles and its founding principles are, any basic history, and nothing based upon not useless knowledge, just so that we can pinpoint where, if they are not right for the nation. As it stands, you, Mr. Van Hoeven, and I both got citizenship in Zealandia not through a test. We just got it because we were awarded with an award, which makes it slightly unfair for us to say that others cannot have the right to be here.
Laws change, and you should first go through the first procedure and then say, well, this wasn't good, we should change it. I think we should not.
We should always be open to change how it works, but we cannot rely on complete bureaucracy all the time.
Oh no, of course not. The question is,
of course, bureaucracy works in the case that if something needs evaluated, it's evaluated. If something needs changed, it is changed. But to continually change it would be counterproductive. But I do not believe that we should rest our laurels upon one test, which, as I see it already, is completely unfair. A new type of test should be introduced. For all we know, this new type of test can be used in other nations if they want to use it. I think Zealandia could be a great example for the rest of the micronational community if we show a lenient and tolerant stance on immigration and our borders.
Oh yes, we should show tolerance. But like rights that the left wants to limit freedom in front of equality, and that the right wants to limit equality in front of freedom. Well, I think that if we would introduce this test, we should not make more than 5 to 10 questions.
And if they don't actually have to be questions, they can also be just a brief assessment of the person themselves. So
yes, also maybe what they would want to achieve within the kingdom. Why do they want to join?
We cannot ask them for their life story, of course, and we can't ask them. We should. I don't think it's up to the government to take complete acceptance. Of course, the test should be used as a guideline. It should not be the defining factor of who's.
No, of course not. I think that when people apply, the way that they apply would be already about themselves. This test would only, this little test, as I want to call it, would only be more to increase the picture, that you can see more about it. But indeed, as you say, even in macronationalism, I do not think we should make a 100-page test with impossible questions that we even can't answer. I think that if we would make a question about a culture, we should make it about macronational culture. Like, what do you think is typical Zealandian? But mostly what they think is that we can see that they have a picture of Zealandia and that they have observed it or have watched it.
Or even if they don't know, they're willing to cooperate. They're happy for people to come in and work here as long as they have the right qualifications. They can have any citizenship they like, as long as it's compliant with our own regulations. That's my own view on that as a whole. Though I have to say that I am quite loose. I'm looser than you are, Bradley, on this issue, and I know how protective you are of borders and how protective you are of culture. So that's it.
It's a very sensitive issue for us both. I think we are like fire and water on this part. I think on basis of working, I think that if people want to work here, that we need at least to distribute licenses, temporary work licenses, or maybe 3 months, 4 months, or a year, or visa, but not or the ID card. I think that would be rubbish. But still, we should not let them go work free. We should make some how you call it? You should make some demands of it.
Yeah.
Like you must state the reason. You must apply for a visa or a labor thingy card.
Okay. Fair enough. I think that's kind of where we are standing. In the case there is a compromise, things will have to be sorted out. If a compromise cannot be made, we may just have to slightly modify the current stance.
Yes.
New Zealandia. We can't expect, of course, every situation is different. We cannot enact a Dutch style or a foreign policy in Zealandia because that would be completely different. We have territories all around the world. I'd be very happy to give foreign policy rights to every independent province that works for them. In my opinion.
Yeah, indeed, we could go for a federal kingdom or a confederal
Well,
kingdom.
we don't want to go. I wouldn't go that far as to say that, but I do believe that it should be up to the provinces to manage their own borders. In my opinion.
Yes, I was thinking about this because in my native nation, of course, in Witland, of course, each state has a governor, or in this current form, the governor is also the noble. But let's say each state has a elected governor.
Our province is
Zealandia, if we would
Zealandia
take this.
Sorry,
It's more a proposition, right? It's more a proposition, not a already like this, but that each state has a sub-autonomous in which they have semi-unlimited power within their state, as long as they still support. I will keep it short then. About as long as they still support the government and the constitution, and as long as they live by that, we should give every state the semi-autonomy.
Okay. Well, this will have to be continued later. I have to say though that I have got limited time now, so
I just want, just before we wrap up, I just wanted to ask one last question.
Okay.
What is your stance on promoting the arts?
Shall I go?
Yes.
Again, arts. I can make a big, huge song and dance about the arts because it can literally mean anything that can mean to define the expression. I'm actually for arts and language, arts and culture, one's own individual culture. I'm absolutely happy for people to bring this in. With this, I'm happy to say that that a university for Zealandia could be officially enacted, a proper university, a college, let's say, that allows people to study their own studies, share their own constructions, share their own pieces with others, and basically define what Zealandia is in its inside. Of course, arts are very important things in the sense that it allows people to feel more comfortable in their own country. Of course, Zealandia has a minority language of Fransilish, and I think it's very important that the new Department of Royal Family can share its language with the rest of Zealandia. Again, with Mr. Van Hooden, I think it's up to him if he wants to share the Dutch language, because I'm very interested in it myself. Also the Maori language, and also, of course, English in some areas where English may not be a direct tongue.
Of course, on my point, if we would develop culture, I would. I'm not quite a support of multiculturalism, but in this sentence of Western multiculturalism, that because we're all from Western countries, then we could establish that.
I think it's up to if people are willing to partake in the day. Arts can mean absolutely anything to many people. So
indeed, I think that indeed a university would be a smart idea. Although we should lay more first. If the government should be involved in developing the culture,
it should be there to protect it, in my opinion. I think it should be there to say, okay, we know that there are people who have a desire to express themselves through expression of art, and we are willing to fund that. We are willing to say that this is something that we want to allow, or we can say, well, in the case that and we can also moderate what goes through, in the sense that if it's maybe seen as offensive, of course we cannot. I'm not trying to sound right-leaning here, but in the case that there is a case in everywhere you go around the world that you do have people who are very, very violent and very, very offensive in their image. But it's up to how people think, and not one person thinks, and I think if in that stance where we do have a person who may have produced something that's completely distasteful, it should not be. No culture should be literally brandished out and thrust upon people, because it's up to them if they want to include themselves in it. Of course, they're willing to take part in the culture, and I'm very willing to continue that culture from developing.
Yes, I would support the culture and not develop it, but I would indeed, like Mr. Puchowski says, have a protective hand over it to stop any people from doing it harm, and to make sure that all these weird guys like Islamic extremists or Mr. von Linden with depicting weird things should be banned and kept out of our culture. We should further allow the free development of the extremists out. But on the basis of freedom of speech, I say we must make it unlimited. But in freedom of expression, on basis of depicting your
we have less than a minute left.
Things should not be based on hate speech. Hate speech should always be banned. Also, a short topic, I think that the Bank of Zealandia should be privatized.
Okay.
I think
I'll just quickly say, I'm not going to have a big debate about this because it's a national icon, because it's a national structure. I do not believe that it should be given to the hands of somebody who may be willing to use it for their own benefit. It should be protected as a Zealandian national icon. It should never be in the hands of someone who could be willing to abuse it. That's my own opinion.
I do not agree.
Okay.
Well, I think now that we've just reached the 1 hour mark,
Okay.
I think we should.
I hope so.
Should we start wrapping this up?
Yes. Okay. Do you want me to do a quick summarization?
If you could, please.
Okay. Is this being recorded, by the way?
Yes, it is.
It's okay. So if you want to say this, okay, I might put this in the campaign video, but okay, I'm willing to work with Zealandia as a person who's had many experience in many fields. Although I am endorsed by the SDP, I do believe that it's up to the people to decide exactly what they want. I'm willing to cooperate with any other party that decides to take part in Zealandia. I'm willing to open up a free cabinet. I'm happy for the immigration status to continue as it is. I'm free for open diplomacy. I want to restore Zealandia's former glory, and I want Zealandia to become a migrant community. And I do think that it's up to compromise, and it's up to just being Zealandians that makes Zealandia what it stands for, and generally just getting along. Although differences may occur between me and Mr. Van der Hoeven, it's completely up to what people say. I don't speak, as long as I know that this is what people want, I speak for the people, and I don't speak for private enterprise. I do not speak, I will never speak for those who are in a hierarchy. I believe that all people are generally equal and should be treated equal, and those from other countries should be treated with the same respect that everyone else in this country deserves.
I think that we all should be equal, but that we must take this equality in own hands by granting as much freedom as possible. I think that we must create a government in which both parties are involved, and we must also in the foreign affairs make sure that we create a bigger bond and more cooperation between Zealandia and Sirocco. That Sirocco is a neighbor nation. Although conservative, it is a neighbor nation. We should not look at the ideology of it. We must focus on mainly on restoring the glory of it, the nation. We should create the border police, merge some police forces to create one police force. We should maybe make stronger and make more harder immigration laws. though not too hard, maybe 5 or 10 questions for a test. I think we should privatize as many of the state-owned, make sure that capitalism and free market enjoy as much freedom as possible. And I hope to work together with everyone as best as I can.
Okay. Are we able to finish now, Mr. Barrow?
Yes, we are.
Okay. Yeah. It's been good. Thank you very much, Mr. Van der Hoeven.
Same to you, Puchowski.
Thank you.
Alright, I think that wraps everything up. And I'll finish the recording now.